In part 5 of section 4, we're going to begin looking at the last type of transformation that we'll discuss, which is the stretching and shrinking. We'll start the investigation of stretching and shrinking with the vertical stretch and shrink. Definition 4.4 is going to describe how that stretch and shrink is supposed to occur. And they're going to look very similar whenever you start looking at the equation. Definition starts, it says, let A be a real number. And in previous definitions, we've seen that A had to be a positive value. That's not necessarily the case here. Here it says that A can't be 0 and A cannot be 1. Other than that, any real number you want is perfectly allowed. Now we're going to be using A as a multiplier. So we're going to be taking whatever the function shape is, which is defined by the equation, and then we're going to multiply it by that real value. So this is a multiplier. It's a real number multiplier. And that multiplier is going to fit into one of two categories. The absolute value of that multiplier is either going to be greater than 1 or it's going to be less than 1 but greater than 0. So when we're analyzing the type of stretch or shrink that we have to be looking at the absolute value of that multiplier. In the event that you have it as being larger than 1, that's what we call the stretch. If you have something that's less than 1, then that's when you're going to end up having your shrink. Now, if your multiplier is truly not 0, then you'll never have an issue with this thing being less than 0. It'll always be greater than 0 every time. So that won't be a problem because you're dealing with absolute value. So the important thing to take away from this is, well, several things. Number one, how to determine whether you're dealing with a stretch or a shrink. That's the big thing. The second is, how would you then implement that? Because this is not going to be implemented in quite the same way as the shifting and the reflecting. So it tells us here in this note that we're going to be expected to multiply each y value within our function by the absolute value of that multiplier. So of course we'll see some examples coming up that have these vertical stretch or vertical shrink present.